Welcome back. Last year, a video clip of a carriage horse named Ryder collapsing in New York City went viral. Since then, animal rights activists have pushed for new legislation called Ryder's Law, or Intro 573, to ban the use of carriage horses in New York. Before we start the interview, let's watch a video that sparked widespread concern for Ryder and other carriage horses just like him.
Why you slapping him?
I'm trying to get him up.
Hey, he clearly ain't trying to get up. Oh no.
Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy.
Esses animals don't fucking belong here.
Joining me to discuss Ryder's Law is the Executive Director of NYCLASS, Edita Birnkrant. Edita, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Now, for those who may have missed it, as I mentioned, this happened last year. Could you just update viewers about Ryder and his story that went viral?
Yes, it's really a heartbreaking story. So this was an elderly, very sick horse with cancer that basically was worked to death. This horse had been a carriage horse for 4 months, was pulling a carriage 10 hours a day while emaciated, very sick, until his body gave out right on 10th Avenue in Hell's Kitchen in front of horrified onlookers. The video went viral around the world. And due to the outrage, the city investigated and found that actually, while his owners said he was 13, he was 26, which is the equivalent of an 85-year-old person. And, you know, we believe this is criminal animal abuse. And after he collapsed, it was too late to save him at that point. He had cancer. I mean, imagine an elderly, sick, emaciated person pulling a carriage for 10 hours a day until your body gives out. And so he ended up dying just 2 months later. It was too late to save him, even though he was getting treatment. And that's really heartbreaking. And that he's just one of many horses, though, in similar situations, unfortunately.
Right. So as you mentioned, he's one of many. You know, how is this New York City tradition of, you know, this carriage ride a form of animal abuse?
Right. It's a tradition that needs to be retired, like a lot of other traditions have. Unfortunately, we see many horses like Ryder that are suffering from long-term neglect. They're senior horses, they have pre-existing injuries, they have arthritis, they have lameness, they have untreated ailments, and they're just forced on the street, chained up 10 hours a day in traffic on hard pavement. They go back to stables that are really just warehouse buildings on the far west side that are tiny solitary confinement cells. Horses are herd animals, right? They're meant to be on pasture, on grass with other horses. But in this life as a carriage horse, they are just chained up 10 hours a day, no freedom of movement, in traffic, with pre-existing injuries, you know.
You brought up the traffic part because I understand that, like, it's not the best environment for an animal to be in. Can you just talk about that a little bit more?
Right. So horses are prey animals. People might not realize that. So that means that no matter how well trained a horse is, their instinct, they have a very developed flight drive. So, you know, fight or flight. So when they're scared or startled, they run. So there's a lot of frightening stimuli in Midtown traffic, as you can imagine. Honking horns, swerving cars, you know, yelling people, anything can spook a horse. And so when that happens, they bolt into traffic, often into incoming cars. They break free from the carriage. So this happens often. Just crashes happen, collapses. I mean, anyone who's been in Midtown traffic, you know how chaotic it is, even just walking. But for a horse that's 1,800 pounds becomes a weapon, really, in traffic when they're frightened because they get out of control and they run. This has happened dozens of times in the past few years. So it's really a public safety risk as well for everyone in Midtown. There's been so many crashes and tragedies.
Now, I know that this has been, you know, an issue that animal rights activists have been, you know, wanting to just end for such a long time. But we do have new legislation called Ryder's Law, you know, based on what just happened. You know, could you just talk about that and tell us more about that effort to ban horse carriages just in general?
Yeah, so it was renamed Ryder's Law after Ryder's unfortunate death, just to honor him and to see that there's a way for the future that more horses don't have to suffer. It's Intro 573. But essentially, this legislation would do what so many cities around the world have already done, which is transition an old tradition, horse-drawn carriages on city streets into something new, modern, safe, cruelty-free electric carriages. So these are beautiful carriages that look like horse-drawn carriages, but without the horse. They just have an electric motor, so they're eco-friendly. Many cities around the world have done this. Mumbai, India replaced their whole fleet of carriage horses with electric carriages. Guadalajara, Mexico, cities in Germany, Turkey, Petra, Egypt, where there's many tours of the pyramids. They would rely on like camels and horses. They're replacing them with electric carriages because cities around the world realize not only is it incredibly cruel to do this to horses in the 21st century, it's very dangerous. It's a public safety risk because horses are prey animals and they spook, and they're not meant to be in modern day traffic because it's the 21st century.
Now, Mumbai, India just recently replaced their entire fleet of horse carriages with electric carriages. And other places around the world are also following this trend. Why do you think New York City hasn't caught up to this yet?
Well, that's a good question. New York City is a leader in so many ways, but sometimes I think change can be hard. It's something that has been a tradition, glorified in movies and TV. Right. I think it's when something is a tough political issue, it's not necessarily about what the right thing to do is when there's forces opposing it, when it gets political. So I think it's just been controversial because the owners in the carriage industry kind of don't want to make any changes. There can be resistance to change. They want to keep doing what they've been doing. But, the world changes, the world evolves. This is a trend around the world. And, New York City just can't keep going on with this horse abuse and putting everyone in Midtown at risk. So
just to feel good or just to have that warm feeling. Because so many animals are getting hurt in the process. Yeah. Now, I also want to mention there apparently are benefits to the drivers and passengers if we do switch over to electric carriages. Can you just talk about what those benefits are?
That was very important in this legislation in that it's a win-win for everyone. Not only is it a win for the horses who will go to retirement homes and get to be on grass and be happy, but for the owners and drivers, like in other cities, the former horse carriage drivers and owners say that they increased their profits by 200% sometimes when they made the switch because it's very expensive for the upkeep of a horse. So when you remove that equation, then you can have greater profitability. They would be able to, in New York City, go into other areas of the city that currently they're not allowed to. They can travel in all weather, 24 hours a day, because there's not restrictions because you have a horse that can't be out all day. And also, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, it's okay. Well,
the benefit, right? Okay. So another important benefit is that this would mandate that the actual drivers get benefits and worker protections, which they don't get now. If they're injured, they can't get disability or workers' comp. So it would actually make the drivers real employees by law, give them prevailing wages, sort of uplift their industry because we feel they're being exploited by the carriage owners, being classified as independent contractors, so no protections. So we want this to be a business of the future and a real career for people that has long-term, not a dying industry. And as I said, for the owners, if other cities around the world have done the same thing and increased profits by 200%, that's a pretty great business incentive, I would say. And it benefits everyone because the city will be safer. Right now, you have these horse carriages right in the worst of Midtown traffic. They don't adhere to any safety or road standards. They fall apart so easily. It's just crazy. People don't even have seatbelts on these things and they're out in Midtown traffic. So the electric carriages will have to adhere to really strict federal, local road and safety standards. So then we're going to have a safer city in general. So I see it as nothing but positives.
Now, as I mentioned, it went really viral. We saw so many onlookers who, I think for a lot of people, they don't see it initially as animal abuse because it has always been paired with such happy memories or fond memories of New York City. But we have seen that so many people did care about this horse and care about this. Has there been any support from the other New Yorkers or politicians in support of this new alternative?
Oh, absolutely. There was an outpouring of support ever since Ryder. And then, we know the majority of New Yorkers support banning horse carriages. So there was polling done of New York voters last year, and it showed that over 71% fully agree that yes, we need to get horse carriages off the street. And New Yorkers don't agree on everything always. So I think that we know a majority of people who live in this city want to see this transition to something else. And we do have support in the city council. We have 18 council members signed on as co-sponsors, but we need more to pass this. And like I said, change can be difficult. People get stuck in the past sometimes and resistant to change, but we know that this is the right thing to do. New Yorkers support this. We get people from all over the world that saying, tourists that come here that saying, I can't believe this is still even happening. Why is this still happening? Like, you know, that know how cruel it is. And what, even before the rider situation, this has been going on for decades and decades, this cruelty and abuse. So we have a lot of support.
Now, what can New Yorkers do like to make sure that this alternative gets put into law?
So the best thing that any of your viewers can do is everyone who lives in New York City has a council member, right? So if you call or email, calls are usually best, but you can email your council member. It literally takes less than 5 minutes. And just say, hi, I live blank. I am your constituent. I really hope you will co-sponsor and pass Riders Law Intro 573. I don't want to see these horses abused any longer. We have a great alternative. Simple as that. And, you know, people feel like one phone call or email can't make a difference. But believe me, your elected officials want to know what you hear, what you believe. And when you call and reach out to them, it makes a difference. So if we can generate a lot of phone calls and emails, we can get this passed.
Now, I truly appreciate segments like this where we get to talk about this, because I think I was like one of those New Yorkers who initially when I would see a horse in the street, I would say, oh my gosh, look, there's a horse. And I think a lot of people don't really think, you know, further about. So I'm like, it's a really sad reality that happened, but I think it going viral, like really opened so many people's eyes towards like what was actually happening. I know that your organization's Twitter account also posted, you know, how it's continuing to happen and more horses are being abused. So you could just quickly just talk about like, you know, why that is important to just keep showing people that this is still happening.
Right. We're out there all the time documenting and showing the world because it is still happening, unfortunately. There's not enforced. The city agencies that are supposed to look out for these horses are not doing it. Carriage drivers routinely break the law. They go down one-way streets. They run red lights. Just wild nonsense going on. And elderly, again, senior injured horses, lame horses. Lameness means just basically leg injuries. I mean, that's still going on. So we document this, we report it, we get it out to the public. We want people to see the truth because we're the only ones out there advocating for those horses. And there's so many others just like riders still out there. And we don't want to wait till they collapse on the street and then drop dead shortly after. It's like public animal abuse happening. And like you said, people become immune because something just seems normal. Like, oh, I see it every day. You know, it must be okay. But if we look back in history, a lot of things that seemed normal, now we look back and say, wow, how was that okay? It's not okay because we've evolved.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us to have this conversation.
Oh, it's amazing to be here. Really happy to be, you know, reaching out to the Bronx community because we actually need a lot of support from Bronx council members. So all your Bronx listeners or anyone beyond, if you can contact your council member, we can help save these horses.
Thank you so much for joining us. If you would like to help support the passing of Riders Law, NYCLASS urges you to call or email your council member and ask them to co-sponsor Intro 573. We also encourage you to go to NYCLASS's website at www.nyclass.org/stop horse abuse to find out more information on their efforts. Stay tuned. We have more open for you right after this.